Hello, Mr. Landor.
How you doing?
How are you?
I'm fine.
Good to see you.
You too. Good to see you.
I'm happy to, have the opportunity to have a little one-on-one with you.
I'm looking forward to it.
All right.
I'm looking forward to it.
Okay. Hello, I'm Susannah Johnson Malbreaux, publisher of the Southern View magazine, and I am really happy and honored to have a one-on-one conversation with Andres Landor, who is a retired Lafayette police officer. And we've been over the past few months involved in a number of different things. But
Right.
Before we get into the gist of the interview, would you share with the audience a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm originally from Lafayette. I was born in Lafayette, Louisiana. Grew up in the Truman area, Truman subdivision. Went to Northside High School. I didn't graduate from Northside. My mother was always in education.
Right.
So she ended up moving to Georgia, and of course I moved with her. I graduated in Georgia at a school named Bradwell Institute. After graduating, I joined the military. I did 5 years in the Army. A Desert Storm veteran. In '93, the beginning of '94, I got on with the Lafayette Police Department. And I've been with the police department from '94 till last year. Last January is when I retired. Once retiring, I wanted to get more involved in the community. So I started doing community activist type work.
And you've been doing an excellent job
Thank you.
with that,
Thank
and that's
you.
how, we basically came in contact, with some of the things that were going on. And before I go too far, thank you so much for serving our country.
You're welcome. Thank
That's always appreciated.
And but I mean, that's pretty much my life in a nutshell.
Okay. Is there any one particular person or thing that inspired you to be in law enforcement?
Not really. Actually, when I was in the military, it was coming close for me to either re-enlist or get out. I was a combat medic in the Army, so I was a paramedic in the military. And to be honest with you, I didn't want to re-enlist because my son was just born. My son is now 22, and at the time he was a newborn. I didn't want to re-enlist because I wanted to spend time with him. So what I did was I put out applications throughout the country. Well, I say throughout the country, mostly the Florida area, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana. But I also put out applications for paramedic and police officers.
Okay.
Of course, the first people to call was the Lafayette Police Department. My time was getting short, so I just went ahead and chose to be a police officer because, I wanted some income and stuff like that. And, I had a little interest in it, but it's not like I grew up wanting to be a police officer.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
Right.
And then I think back, when you said your mother was Barbara, and then I think at one of the events we were at, there she was, and she came up to me, and I remember her. She taught my daughter.
Okay. Okay.
Years and years ago. So it's just amazing that we start now looking at the children.
Right.
Of like people I grew up with, and how you guys and so many have just become outstanding citizens in our community. So it's wonderful, I think.
Right.
I think it's wonderful. But you have been with the police department for a number of years. Are there any challenges that you've encountered along the way?
I mean, just being a police officer itself is a challenge because, every police officer wants to go to work and come home safe.
Of course.
And there's always a risk out there of, either you getting injured badly or not coming home at all, being killed on duty. So that's the number one challenge for any police officer. But I think there's a second challenge, of course, when you're an African American police officer, especially in the Deep South. I think there's some things that we as African American officers encounter, different situations.
Like what?
Well, you know, I've patrolled the north side the majority of my career, but for a short time I was sent to the south side of Lafayette, and of course, you know, the south side is upper class, predominantly upper class in Lafayette.
Right.
It's just, you come across attitudes a lot of times of, you know, you come across that attitude of, do you know who I am? Like if you stop someone or if you arrest someone.
Yeah. Don't you know who I am?
Do you know who I am? Or I'm gonna have your job. Do you know who I know?
The threats.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone on one or two calls where the people at the house didn't want me in the residence. You know, I've gone on a call.
And you're just out on a call.
Yeah, I'm
no one kind of dictates where you're going.
Exactly.
It's the call. It's where you're located in the proximity of that call.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, I mean, I've gone on a call. I remember I went on a call when I was a fairly new rookie, but I was dispatched to the south side, and it was in reference to a suspicious person. And when I pulled up on the scene, I got the particulars of the incident that I was going on, the call I was going on, and it was the complainant said there was a black male running in the neighborhood. So of course, me being a black male, I'm thinking running, like running away or running, and I called my dispatcher and I said, I don't see anyone running away. Where were they running from? And
could they have been jogging?
They were jogging, and as I'm on the phone, the dispatcher called the complainant back, and the guy was actually jogging, and he had on jogging, you know, like, you know, shorts, and it was obvious he was jogging, headband and everything. And
probably a resident of the neighborhood.
Right, and the complainant said, I guess she told the dispatcher, the guy's about to run in front of your unit right now. And it was actually the guy that was jogging. And, you know, I took offense to it because I knew this guy was actually only jogging. And of course, I didn't stop the guy because I didn't want to offend him.
Exactly.
You understand? But of course, by me not stopping him, it offended the complainant who was looking out her window.
Right.
So
what time of the day was it?
It was in the morning, around 10 o'clock on I want to say maybe a Monday morning. It was a weekday morning. And eventually I did make contact with the complainant because she wanted to speak to me. And I told her that the guy was jogging, actually jogging, and her reply was, well, he doesn't live here. He doesn't live in this neighborhood. And let me tell you, this neighborhood was humongous.
Yeah.
I mean, this particular neighborhood where I was, I mean, many streets in it. But she said that he didn't live there. And of course, my reply was, well, he doesn't have to live here to jog here.
Right. He could have just been visiting someone.
Right.
So a number of reasons why he would have been there.
So,
or extended a jog from a neighboring neighborhood or something?
Or even live in a rough neighborhood and want to jog, but want to maybe be safe, and he wants to go jog in that neighborhood. I mean, you don't have to have a reason to jog in a particular neighborhood. When you pay taxes in the city of Lafayette, you don't pay taxes for a particular area. You pay taxes for Lafayette as a whole.
Whether you're jogging or driving,
anything,
walking, anything.
Right. So, you know, situations like that. Of course, I was called the N-word several times as a police officer.
By, you know, someone in the department, or, you know, just, you know, like a complainant?
Well, I was called the N-word by, of course, people that I've had to arrest and stuff. And towards the end of my career, I found out that I was called the N-word by coworkers. So I guess, you know, on both sides, you know, from you kind of expect people, or it doesn't surprise you when you handcuff someone who is being nice with you the whole time because they don't want to get arrested, and once you have to arrest them because it was domestic or whatever, the victim wants to pursue charges, then all of a sudden that person refers to you as the N-word.
And as we try to get away from using that word, there are more and more people that have that tendency to continue using it. I guess they feel it I guess puts forth some type of hate. It lets you know how mad they are.
Exactly, because
I'm mad.
right, because I mean, the closer I would get to the parish jail, then I wasn't, and I'm gonna say it, I wasn't a nigga. My mama was a nigga now, and my kids were niggas, and it's like he was trying to push that button,
Right.
or she was trying to push that
that
button.
button.
And the closer we got to the jail, more I guess they figured, well, it's not making him mad, but if I call his loved ones that word, it'll make them mad.
That is horrible.
So you deal with situations.
Right.
I've dealt with situations like that, and like I said, once I discovered that a particular officer on the force was referring to not only me but other officers on the department, black officers on the department, as that word, it didn't shock me because I'm not naive to the culture here. And I'm not
But you don't
naive
have
to
to
what's
accept
going
it.
on, but I don't have to accept it.
Right.
But that's some of the challenges of just being an African American police officer here. And last but not least, I grew up here,
Okay.
so although it helped a lot, it's hard when you go on a call and you see someone that you grew up with, played with, shot basketball with, played football with, on crack or committing a crime, and you have to be the one to, you know what I'm saying? But at times it helps also because, you can communicate with that person to where they understand it's something that has to be done, and a lot of times they prefer someone who knows them do it anyway because they know they'll get treated with respect and stuff.
With at least respect. I mean, it's
Right.
a crime, but you don't have to disrespect people.
Right.
But as you were talking about, maybe being called the N-word, that kind of, bothers me. Especially in the department. Had any type of disciplinary action been taken against any of the people that were using, that word?
Well, actually, this individual, this officer that had used this word, he had used it on more than one occasion, but we only knew of one. And during the investigation, the internal affairs investigation, the second incident came about. But the second incident was this particular officer referring to a passing motorist as the N-word. But what happened was he forgot he was on the phone with another co-worker who was an African American officer. And when he just blurted it out, you know what I'm saying? So I guess subconsciously, not realizing that, I'm on the phone with someone who would be offended by this.
Yeah.
And he said that. And of course, an investigation was started. But what caught my attention was the police department had obtained the audio of this person referring to co-workers as this word a year prior. And nothing was
no
done.
action was taken.
Right. No action was taken until I approached the consul, and I gave each council member a copy of a CD with him, with the recording of him referring to the black officers on the police department as N-words.
It shouldn't even have to get that far, because with that chain of command, with management, management should be proactive in handling that, like any other disciplinary action, needs to be taken against folks that, basically, violate the policy.
Right. And there has
That's
been...
a company policy.
You're right. And at the time, of course, you had, all these incidents going on, like Trayvon and stuff, and all the incidents in Baltimore and Maryland and stuff like that. And
You think that kind of flared things up here in Lafayette? Maybe contributed to it to a certain
I think it flared things up everywhere because I think black folks were, including myself, we were upset. Even though it didn't happen here, we're still upset in general.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Because that is a black person dying, and of course, if anyone dies, if anyone is killed unjustly, it pisses me off, you know,
Right.
it aggravates me, it offends me. But when you're starting to see that there's a difference when we die by the hands of police officers or anyone, and it's a difference between us and them, then that's when you have to start, you know, you start getting aggravated and you start asking questions, you know. And a lot of people get offended when you ask questions, you know, because I don't know, I guess they figure, you know, what I noticed a lot down here is when you point out racism, if you point it out, you the racist. And I don't understand. I mean, that just
Mind-boggling.
yeah, it floors me.
Mind-boggling.
Right.
Yeah.
You know.
And, you know, unfortunately, that, like you said, goes on and has been going on not only in the police department, just in general. You know, if I can share this little story, I can think back to years ago in an office setting, talking on the phone with someone, and in the background, I heard someone making some statements, some remarks, you know, very, very negatively towards a customer, and it happened to be about an African American customer. And then what happened was I was just mind boggled,
Right.
you know, that this is going on. And when I ended the conversation without telling the person I was talking to anything, making them aware that I was hearing the conversation in the background of where she was. And then probably not long afterwards, you know, I got a phone call back from this person. What had happened on her end, the person that was talking didn't realize that she was talking to an African American.
I got you.
Now, they knew, you know, they knew me,
Right.
but, you know, they didn't know that she was on the phone with an African American, and, you know, they just ended up apologizing left and right, and I'm like, well, why is this person saying this anyway?
Right.
You know, especially to a customer. So, you know, I was called I don't want to give credit to it, but it's some type of silent, sophisticated racism where it's just going on, you know, like in the background. And, you know, people, you know, there are a lot of racist people, but what happened after that and other things in that environment, I remember the Independent writing an article. It was this big front page cover that said racism in Lafayette. You know, and racist years ago. I'm like, and someone came to me and they're like, well, Susannah, is there racism in Lafayette? And at the time, I had just started stepping outside of the business world, getting involved in the community, attending meetings and what have you. And I told this person, I said, you know what? Yes, there is. And she said, is there racism here? I said, yes, there is. In this building, there are, unfortunately, some racist people.
Right.
Not everyone,
Right.
you know, but some people are, and they carry that, whether it's at home, on the job, you know, out and about, they do, you know. So I don't know. I mean, I've never been. I mean, I've always believed in treating people fairly, regardless of the color of their skin.
Right.
And that's how I go about, you know. And those people that, you know, are those racist folks, I just stay clear of them. I may say hello. I don't have to strike up a conversation with you. You know, I'll just give you the respect because I'm a respectful person.
Right.
You know, I'm a respectful person, but it would be great if there was, and I guess I was leading towards that after telling that story, thinking about the location where I was, is that is there any type of sensitivity training, you know, like with the police department, you know, at, you know, different businesses that have a number of African Americans, whites, and folks of other races? You know, have they been having?
No, they haven't. We have something that's called in-service, and every year there's, you have to go through in-service. And basically what in-service is for, it's for you to recertify with different pepper sprays and first aid and stuff like that, your firearms qualifications. And there's usually something on the agenda that says diversity training, but
Well, if you're calling it in-service, it's not diversity training, and
Right.
it's not sensitivity training,
Right.
because that is a topic within itself.
And I can tell you now, even Kraft, even the former chief who just retired, made the statement that they definitely needed to start some type of diversity training and in the police department and stuff. But right now, I don't think there is. As a matter of fact, when I left, there wasn't. There wasn't. And it's definitely needed.
Yeah, and I mean, ultimately, I think as we got into integration, it probably needed to be started 42 years ago.
And you know what? I say this. The individual who was referring to his coworkers as the N-words, he received a 30-day suspension. Of course, all over the nation, other sheriffs and police chiefs were fired. No, it's
Okay,
not paid,
okay.
but still, in other departments, they were, the administrators were firing these individuals because you have to think about this. Okay, this person is going to eventually supervise an African American.
Right.
So how would that African American who's being supervised by this individual feel if he gets a low score on his evaluation at the end of the year? Not only how he will feel, but what motivated him, what was his true motivation to give him that?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Not only that, but then you have to start questioning the court system. When I say the court system, I mean if that particular officer arrests a black person and it goes to court, the first thing his defense attorney is going to bring up is the incident where he referred to African Americans as dumb N-words, So I think it's going to always be a hindrance when it comes to that particular officer. So why would you even keep this particular officer, on the force? And unfortunately, let's say if you're a banker and you feel that way. Of course, if you're a banker, the only thing you can do is maybe deny my loan. I can't get a loan, a mortgage loan because of that. So I go to another bank and stuff. But when you're a cop, if you take your views and use it on your job, that a person ends up in jail, or a person can end up dead. It's a bigger, that person has a bigger risk, he loses a lot more.
We're saying that, they could end up shooting somebody just because
No
of
doubt.
the race.
No doubt.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's horrible.
I mean, look at the officer in South Carolina. I think it was South Carolina when the guy was running away
Yeah.
and he threw the taser down on the ground.
Right.
So you have to question yourself, if that was a white guy, would he have shot?
Yeah, and you really can't get an answer for that.
Right.
Because folks, no doubt, will have some type of justification
Right.
for why they did what they did. But that doesn't bring the person that was shot back to life.
You're right.
It's ended. It's gone.
One day me and two coworkers were sitting down talking, and one of the coworkers, one was black, one was white, and the black coworker wanted to buy some land that the white coworker's grandfather was selling, and he said, "Man, talk to your grandfather about that property. I'm interested in buying it." And the white coworker said, "He won't sell it to you." So the black coworker said, "What you mean he won't sell it?" "No, I have the money. I'm interested. I'm really serious about this land." "No, you don't understand. He won't sell it to you." And like, why? Because of your color.
Right. Wow.
Okay. So
I'm not shocked. I'm not surprised, because that is just one of many incidences like that in the Lafayette area, and I think the gist of the community don't know. I mean, the people that have that property know, they know that they're not going to sell it to someone of a different race. But the majority of the people in Lafayette probably have no idea that that is going on.
And this conversation didn't happen in the 70s.
Right.
I mean, I was born in 70. This conversation happened like 2 years ago.
Wow.
And the white officer, once he saw the black officer getting upset, and of course, I was kind of like, you know, he said, well, y'all got to understand, it's the culture. And at first I got offended because I'm like, that's not the culture. I said, the culture is gumbo and zydeco and you know, sugar cane and that's the culture. Crawfish. Festivals.
Yeah.
That's the culture. And then I sat back and I thought about it and I said, you know, racism, the South, Jim Crow, that's all part of, that all plays in culture. So just because it's bad doesn't mean it's not culture.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Not to say it has to be accepted because it's the culture, but
and it doesn't mean that there's not an opportunity for it to change.
Right. And I told him, I said, you know what? You're right. It is the culture. It may be wrong.
It's wrong.
No, it's not maybe wrong. It is wrong, but you're right. That is the culture. And that's why it's so deeply embedded in us down south. And that's why states like California and New York are so many years ahead of us in everything, you know, because of culture.
Yeah.
You know.
We still have a lot of work to do.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
In this area. So it just kind of brings up another point. I guess the relationship between the police department and the community, especially like the African American community. Is there, any positive things you can maybe talk to the community about on how they should act, when they come across the police department or a policeman, or let's say a policeman stops them, for whatever reason? How should, let's say an African American conduct themselves in the presence, and let's say it's a Caucasian officer that's stopping them?
Well, I wrote a blog about this a while back. It's unfortunate because a lot of times, with the internet right now, you can look at YouTube. I think they did an experiment where it was an open carry state. An open carry, for the people who don't understand, that's you can actually carry a gun with you as long as it's not concealed and it's legal. You can walk around the street with it. You can't go in businesses. You can go into business, but if they actually leave, you have to leave. So they did an experiment. I'm not sure which state it was, and they gave a white guy a rifle, and he slung it around on his shoulder, and he walked up and down the street. Now he was encountered by the policeman. But it was more of a conversation. Where you going? Where you headed? Can we see your weapon? No. Why you have it? It's open carry state. Okay. It was just a conversation. And then they gave that same weapon to a black guy. They sent him down the same street, probably on a different day, to not alone. So that the policeman
not alert them.
Right. And he was approached at gunpoint. And
really?
He was laid down on the street, and he was pat down, and he was ran for this, ran his name for this. So they treated him totally opposite. And
was it the same two officers?
I don't think it was the same officer. I think it was the same department.
Okay.
But they treated him differently.
Did they video?
Oh yes, it's on YouTube.
It's on YouTube. Okay.
If you write YouTube, black guy, white guy, walking with AR-15, that's the name of the rifle, it'll come up. But it's unfortunate that when you're black, there's different rules that people suggest you follow when encountering a police officer. I think the stereotype of there was an experiment where they said that when a person calls in a call on a black suspect, the black suspect is usually called in as being a couple of feet taller than he actually is. So if the person is 5'9", by the time the complainant calls it in, they add a couple of feet, you know, a feet or two to him. He's no longer 5'9", he's 6'6".
Why is that?
It's I don't know. It's just I think it's first of all it's an intimidation
I was just going to
type
say
of
maybe intimidation.
Right.
You know, if I'm taller, then I'm scared. More scared.
right, and not only height, but usually, and you can Google this. Usually, a person who's 15, they'll give a description. He looks approximately 21. 19. Several years older than he actually is. And I think on many calls that I used to go on, when I would encounter like a large crowd of, let's say, black males, I wasn't intimidated because I just looked at them as people.
Right.
Black males, people I went to the club with when I was in the club, or people, that I hung around with at the park. But a lot of white officers see these black males as a threat. You know what I'm saying? So, of course, when I go into the situation, I'm not ready to pull my gun. I'm comfortable. I'm still aware that anything can happen, but I'm comfortable. But many times, some of them, when they go into a situation like that, you automatically a threat by your color.
Wow. I mean, so it's like twofold. The white officers are afraid when they're approaching, a black suspect. And then the black suspect is afraid because they're being approached by an officer. But the officer is the one carrying the weapon
Right.
in most cases.
Right.
I mean,
And let me tell you, I've worked with many white officers who are not intimidated. They just see a person as a person. You know what I'm saying?
As they should.
Yeah. I mean, just to be frank, I know of many like that, but it's just unfortunate, sometimes when an officer would get a call in a bad neighborhood.
Define bad neighborhood. Just joking.
A bad neighborhood,
I know, there are some
like high in
people-
drug,
yeah, drugs.
high in drug, low, high in poverty. You know what I'm saying?
But that doesn't mean the people are bad.
True.
I mean, those activities, are going on in that neighborhood, but that doesn't speak, and the people in that neighborhood shouldn't be lumped into a category.
You're right.
So, because some of that traffic may not even be people that reside in those neighborhoods.
And you're right. And many times when I was working in the narcotic aspect of law enforcement, many times the customers were from other neighborhoods.
Because it's easier to go into a declared bad neighborhood, high drug, crime and what have you, to continue, having crime.
And let me say, there's drugs on both sides of the railroad track.
Right.
It's just unfortunate. When you start talking about crack cocaine, of course, crack cocaine to me is one of the major problems when you start speaking about drugs.
Right.
And it's unfortunate, but if you go in the predominantly black neighborhoods, it was the African Americans who were selling the crack cocaine. Now, if you white and you want to smoke crack, of course you have no choice but to. So that's why you would see droves and droves of collar wearing, tie wearing white guys and white women also in these areas that you wouldn't even walk in if you weren't working. You know what I'm saying? And the only thing that would give them the guts to drive in this neighborhood and interact with people on the corner is their addiction. But the same thing is going on the south side. It's just that the drugs that are being distributed on the south side, of course, is predominantly, of course, meth, and then you have marijuana, and of course, pills. Prescription pills is a real big problem. But the difference is, they don't sell it. You don't drive down the streets and buy. The difference is, it's a phone call and meet me at Como Park, or meet me at the Walmart, or meet me at and it's done there, or it's done in the clubs, in the bathrooms, you know, in the nightclubs, and that's the difference. But I mean,
It's still, both are still wrong.
both are still wrong.
Both are still wrong.
Right.
And people are getting hurt, you know, in both scenarios.
Hmm. And you know, when one thing that I did notice, and I told this to a judge that came to the house, and she was actually running for judgeship, and she asked why I was retiring, and I said, you know, different reasons. I said one of the reasons is I don't want to be part of the system anymore, because the system. I always tell my wife, those two women in front of the federal courthouse, they're peeking behind those blind folks. And they asked, well, what you mean by that? And I said, you know, when I was doing narcotics and I was, you know, arresting Tyrone, which metaphor for black, I'm just going to be frank with you. When I was arresting the black guys, I would always get subpoenas to go to court. I mean, I would have a folder full of subpoenas, you know, for distribution of crack cocaine, possession of paraphernalia, possession of marijuana. But when I started arresting Billy, white guys, I would get letters that would say, he's been considered for this particular class, and once he completes this class, you know, his charges will be dropped. And I mean, it got bad. It was like, I'm never going to court for them. It's like, they get it fixed. They get
Before
it even hits the courtroom. You know what I'm saying? But yet, I'm always going and sit in a courtroom and watch a little black dude plead to a charge. You know, and I didn't want to be part of that system anymore, because the system wasn't fair.
Right.
You know?
Job opportunity, you're retired, maybe you could, you know, get into conducting, you know, sensitivity training, diversification and things along that thought. You know, I mean, right now, like you said, you're pretty much involved in the community. You have an opportunity, you know, to respond to, you know, incidences that, you know, if you were still on the police force, you wouldn't be able to openly, you know, share that with anybody.
Right.
You know, so, you know, I mean, God has a plan for everybody, so, you know, there are still some things, like I said, I really appreciate you being out in the community and opening, you know, the minds of people to what is actually going on in the police department, because until you got out there and started speaking,
Right.
I mean, I think maybe the officers probably knew what was going on, but it wasn't made public, and you came out to the forefront and you made that public and started opening the minds of not only, you know, the people in the police department, but the community as a whole. You know, so that's an opportunity for healing.
Right.
You know, because before you can move forward, you know, you have to, you know, heal all the ills that have been making, you know, people sick.
Right.
You know, and we know it's not overnight, you know, but I'm very optimistic, and I like to think that we can move past that, and I'm thinking it's kind of leading me to the new interim police chief, you know, Reginald Thomas,
Yes.
who has an opportunity to bring a different perspective of leadership, you know, to the Lafayette Police Department. So how do you, I mean, even though you're retired, how do you see interacting with him and, you know, providing some type of assistance to him? Because he will need to reach out into the community.
I mean, I've been working with Reg for over 20 some years, so he was there when I got there. We had a good working relationship. We were also friends. We're still friends. I think, I mean, I'm looking forward to, if Reginald needs anything, you know, I'm willing to help him in any way I can with the police department. He's the right person for the job, because he knows exactly what needs fixing in the police department. He's fair. He's known as a fair person. Black officers, white officers look at him as the same. You know, he's fair. He calls it like it is.
And you know what, too, Andres, when you're fair, open, and honest, people respect that.
Right.
And, you know, that actually transcends the color of your skin
Right.
because you treat everybody fair.
Right.
You know, and
Right.
you're open and honest to everyone. So, you know, and then no doubt, he no doubt has all the qualifications
Right.
it takes to be, the chief of police. So, you know, I would think that with him being like appointed as the interim chief, you know, he has that's like an indication that he has like the qualifications to be, you know, the chief of police. So I do hope, in fact, that when that time comes,
That they choose
you
him.
know, that they choose him. I mean,
Right.
I'm like the interim chief for like 6 months.
Right.
You know, that means that I can run it, I can make a difference, you know, I am qualified, you know, to do this job. So,
Right.
you know, I've spoken to him and I know he's definitely open to the community coming in to assist him. And, you know, I think, so today really is his first day.
Right. Today is
You know,
his first
today is
day.
his first day and that's awesome.
And you know, one thing about Reg is he's originally from New Orleans, and he grew up in the inner city. Where's most of your crime? Inner city, right?
Inner city.
So if you have a person who genuinely cares about the inner city, then of course they're going to put more efforts into fixing the problems of the inner city.
Right.
So I that's one reason why I think that, I mean, he's definitely going to work with the community, both on the north side and the south side. But I say again, where is most of your crime?
It's on the north side.
It's on the north side because it's poverty, high poverty, you know, no jobs, you know. So that's where the focus needs to be. I mean, we have 4 or 5 unsolved murders on the north side, not on the south side. You know, we have shootings, frequent shootings on the north side. Now, don't get me wrong, there's shootings on the south side also, but you know, I'm just gonna call it like it is. There's more shootings on the north side. So the focus needs to be here. Not saying forget about you know.
Well, you don't forget about any other
Right.
area, but you do have to focus on that
Where the problem
area
is.
where the problem is, the high crime, you know,
Exactly.
the violence,
Right.
and begin to minimize that and then eliminate it.
True. I mean, if you have a infection in your right hand, you're not gonna start giving yourself shots in your left hand to cure it.
Never reach the right hand.
Right. So I think Red is gonna be, you know, the perfect guy. He'll do a good job, and he knows what needs focusing on. Not only in the community, he knows what needs focusing on within the department.
Right.
Intimidation, a lot of times, I think a big problem within the police department was intimidation. If you told something that happened involving a police officer, if that police officer was part of the favorite guys, the clique, then you got labeled as something negative, and many times you got targeted. And when I say targeted, I don't mean targeted like they're gonna shoot you in a crack house when you're doing a raid one day. I'm talking about targeted where the paperwork, you start getting write-ups for nothing, like simple things that people have done 20, 40, 50 times more of, you getting the write-ups on it.
Yeah, you know, too, I'm not going to say that it's not racism. Not only is it, you know, racism, you know, it's poor management. You know, when you talk about that intimidation factor, if I'm a manager and I can't do my job properly because I may be intimidated, you know, or scrutinized by what other people say, I shouldn't have been and should not be in that position. But if I'm a strong manager and I'm focused on doing the right thing and being fair to everybody, then yes, I'm the right person, you know, and that's what I think you're saying too about, you know, Reggie, you know, strong manager, not cocky, you know, just strong, determined focus.
Right.
You know, strong, determined, and focused, and that's why I think, you know, you would be instrumental, you know, with him. The community, you know, needs to step up, you know. He needs to, and we want to see him have some successes.
Right.
You know, you talked about the 5, you know, unsolved murders, you know, what a success that would be to, you know, knock that down, you know,
Right.
maybe to 2, you know, ultimately completely, but you know, knock that down and catch the people, and maybe some of the tactics that, you know, he will implement will help that, you know, to move forward, because somebody knows who did what.
Right.
You know,
Right.
somebody knows, somebody's just not speaking.
Right.
You know, but then on the other side of that, it's about us taking ownership and control of our communities and our neighborhoods, and not allowing that to continue.
Right. I agree.
You know, and I'm thinking, one of the things that I see happening, you know, in our community in 2016 is a shift in leadership, a change in leadership, you know, with Reggie, with, like, let's say Gerald Boudreaux coming on as a, you know, state senator, you know, with the formation of the Senior Pastoral Alliance. Can you see that formation,
Right.
you know, happening right here? I don't know if folks are stopping and taking notice, but there's a transformation that's taking place. And I think it's key for everybody to jump on board and support it. And we're not saying that we don't want, like, other, you know, cultures and races to partake in that.
Right.
But if everything bad is happening on the north side, maybe the ones that can fix it are African Americans.
Right. I agree.
Because, you know, we know the neighborhoods, we know the people in the neighborhoods, you know, so that alliance, you know, that's going on, that's happening, I think it's really, it's a transformation, it's a blessing from God, you know, putting key people in key places at the right moment and in time.
Right.
You know, I mean, do you see that?
Yeah, I
happening?
definitely see it. That's one of the reasons I was a strong supporter of Joe Robideau for city parish president, is because, I mean, the former administrator, D. Stanley, was, I mean, he was CEO for 12 years.
Yeah.
So it was going to be pretty much the same old, you know, business.
Unfortunately.
Right. And I can remember him, D. Stanley, making a comment saying, I think they asked him a question about what will you do, what will be one of your accomplishments if you win the elections? And he said, make Lafayette even better than it is, something to that effect. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, he made reference to it, not making it better than it is, but he said something like making it, Lafayette is good, it's great, but make great even better, something like that, to that effect. And I'm like, it's not good on this end of
It's not
town.
good, yeah.
It's not good on this
There,
end
you
of
know,
town.
there are some good things, no doubt, that's happening in Lafayette, but it's not happening throughout the city.
Throughout the
Because
city, exactly.
I always say, you know, if you want to build your city, you know, you have to build up all areas of it. You know, I mean, North Lafayette is the gateway to Lafayette.
No doubt.
You know, and it has always needed improvement on that end of town. Now, I still say, you know, it still starts with the community.
Right.
You know, we have got to do a better job of taking care of our neighborhoods.
True.
You know, we have got to do a better job, and I don't think we should just sit and wait for someone else to come and make our communities better.
Right.
You know, so I think with the, you know, alliance, with the Pastors Alliance, you know, they reach the heart of the people in North Lafayette
Right.
every Sunday and throughout the week, you know. So, excuse me, if that message, you know, comes from the pulpit
Right.
and flows through, you know, the communities, you know, we should start seeing some changes.
Some change. Right.
In our community, and we should be open, you know, to those changes that will help to make our community better and safer, so that when you, the police officers are out there, they don't have to worry about, is their life going to end today? Or will they have to end someone else's life?
Well, you originally asked me a question, how should African Americans act when they're encountered by police officers? And of course we got off onto, we started.
I was coming back.
But, I mean, just treat a police officer with respect.
Yeah.
Now of course, a lot of times.
But if I'm on drugs, I don't know what that is. I'm high, I'm whatever, in some other world.
True.
Or something. So,
But I mean, when I say treat a police officer with respect, if you're on drugs and you're not in your
your right state of mind.
I'm referring to the little guy driving down Marsh Street in a Mercedes, and his mama's Mercedes, and he get pulled over because he hit that car matching description.
Right.
I say that because it happened to my son. Okay. You treat him with respect. I mean, you may know it's BS. You may think it's BS. But if you treat them with respect, now of course, a lot of times you may treat them with respect, and they may respond without respect. And it's just hard to digest. I know it would be hard for me to digest, even before I became a police officer. When I was just a young soldier in Fort Benning, initially, I'm gonna show you respect, no matter, if you're a police officer or not. But once you start disrespecting me,
then that officer is on the defense.
Exactly, and it's hard for me to continue respecting you. You know what I'm saying?
So it starts, with that citizen being stopped, starting off being respectful, and then you give respect, you will get respect in return.
Exactly.
We'd like that to be that way.
But it's hard to respect someone who says you didn't signal when you switch lanes. When you never switch lanes. It's hard to, when you walk up to my vehicle and I'm looking at you and I say, well, why did you stop me, officer? Well, you didn't signal when you switch lanes. It's hard for me to still be respectful when you lying about the signal change from the jump. You know what I'm saying? Because I never even switched lanes.
But you have to practice that because you don't want the negative consequences to happen.
You're right.
Because if that police officer reacts negatively and then gets hostile, will you even live to tell the story of what happened?
And you're right. You're right.
You won't.
When I used to patrol and when I used to work narcotics, they used to say, when I got behind that particular car, he looked nervous. Or when I stopped him, he's nervous. He probably have drugs in his car. And me and one other officer would be like, okay, before you was a cop, didn't you get nervous just because a cop got behind you? Everything, you have your license, your insurance, you're not doing anything illegal, but you're nervous because it's the police.
Right.
The police don't get nervous of the police.
No.
If you off duty and you driving down Marsh Street and the police get behind you, first of all, you're not gonna be nervous because it's somebody you work with.
Right.
Even if you're in if I'm in another city and the police get behind me, I'm not nervous because I'm a former police officer and I feel like my experience and what I know, my knowledge of the law will keep this guy from doing anything crazy with me. Unless I'm just in some hick town where it don't matter. You know what I'm saying? They don't even want my kind here anyway. But police don't get nervous of the police, but anyone who's not a police, even if you're not doing anything wrong, you're gonna get nervous. So I would always say, well, what you expect? The police, you just got behind him and stopped him. Of course he's gonna be nervous. It don't mean he has drugs in his car.
Didn't do it, not necessarily they did anything wrong.
Right,
I had an incident just a couple of weeks ago, and I saw those bright lights flashing because it was at nighttime, and the first thing I thought, I'm like, are they coming after me? And then I thought, what did I do? And I assumed like they were like right on me, so I went ahead and turned onto the first street I came up on, and we were talking flashback. Let's see, do I have my license? Is everything intact? So I just went ahead and I pulled over and I said, waited for him to come to the window, And I rolled the window down, and he spoke first. He said, "Ma'am, do you know why I stopped you?" I said, "I have no earthly idea." You know, and he said, "Well, your tail lights are off." I'm like, "Really?" And I really was surprised because I
Right.
did not know that the lights, my back lights, were not working. And he said, "Do you mind getting out of the car?" He said, "Because there's something I want to show you." And then I'm thinking, I am a little nervous. He wants me to get out of the car because my lights are out. So I went ahead, I got out of the car, and he's like, and he showed me something else that was not working, in the back of my car, as well. And he said, "Well, you do need to get that fixed." He says, "Where are you headed?" I says, "I'm actually going home, straight home." He's like, "Oh, okay. So if you could go ahead and get that fixed, So
Right.
he was basically alerting me, that something was wrong. I did get back into the car. And he's like, "Well, look, I need to run this, so he did whatever, they get your license, and
Right.
they kind of run
For
through
warrants and stuff.
Right, warrants,
Right.
But again, I was nervous,
Right.
but I didn't overreact. I just sat there, and I know everybody can't, do that. I'm older, I'm a little wiser, and I've heard so many stories, especially with everything that's going on now. I was not going to overreact. Like, "Well, how dare you stop me," and whatever, so I stayed calm, And I'm going to share with the audience too that there is a video that is on YouTube called "Know Your Rights," and it's been out there for years and years and years. I would suggest folks, just, review it, share that with other people, because it gives perfect examples of what you should not do when you're stopped by, the police. I mean, whether it was back 20 years ago, those are still things that, folks can do now. So I suggest that, folks do that. Go ahead, you were going to say something?
I was gonna say, there was a young guy that I mentored. And he wasn't a trouble guy. He actually had never been in trouble. Actually, a good friend of my son. Grew up with my son. Ended up going to high school with my son here in Lafayette. And he would get stopped every day coming from.
Every day?
Every other day. Every other day he would get stopped coming from football practice.
Why were they stopping him?
Now the school he went to a private school. He went to Turlings, okay? He went to Turlings. But he had family, he lived, the area of town that he lived in, it was, a rough neighborhood or an area that had a lot of drug activity. But they would stop him every day, and he drove a Cadillac, okay? And he had some little rims. It wasn't expensive rims, it was some rims. It wasn't the Cadillac factory rims, but they would stop him every day, and he calls me coach, because I coached him since he was 7. And it would be like, "Coach, they stopped me again." After the stop, he would call me, "Coach, they stopped me again." And it was the same unit, it was the same unit, task force, whatever you want to call them, that kept stopping him. And when you start talking about respect, after the 3rd stop, and I'm trying to get home and do my homework, and I just finished running sprints at football practice, and you stopping me because I'm in a Cadillac, and I got dreads. It's hard to respect. Yeah. It's hard to say, well, you still have to respect, because as a human you get aggravated. You get aggravated. You stop me 3 times this week. On top of that, I get home and I watch TV and I see what's going on in Baltimore and what's going on here and what's going on there. So it's aggravating, so it's just hard. Sometimes it's hard to respect, what I'm saying?
So in a case like that, would it help, if that person, file a report, with the police department? And bring that to a higher level and, expose it and, just kind of bring it out in the open.
You can't bring it to the police department, because the police department is part of the team. Right. I mean, what they gonna tell you? Stop. Don't stop that guy anymore? That wasn't.
But there was no probable cause. What was the probable cause? It
Don't
can't
know.
be that he has he's driving, but the officers to me should have been brought up, to, I like to say management, I know there's a different term in the police department, but they should have been brought up, to say, well, okay, we've got this complaint, you're stopping this person every day. Why? What's the cause? It just needs to be brought in the open. As long as the units, those police officers continue to do the same thing over and over again with no one asking or even questioning what they're doing, they're going to continue doing it.
You're right. And when you start talking about probable cause, it's a 16-year-old, it's a 16-year-old's explanation to, against a police officer's, is his word against a police officer's word. I'll give you an example, and I think you may have heard this story. Me and my son going to Ole Miss to visit college.
Right.
I pass up a state trooper on the side of the road in Mississippi. I'm in the left lane. I'm in the right lane the whole time because I just got on that highway. I compliment the unit because it was a nice unit. It was a Charger. It had the little reflective, invisible stickers on it and stuff. And the unit comes up behind me. My son looks behind and sees the unit coming. And he says, "The police gonna get someone." And I look and I say, "Yep, he gonna get somebody." And
little did you know.
But the police is in the left lane. I'm in the right lane.
Right.
And what he does is he gets on the side of me and he rides on the side of me. And he looks in my unit. He looks in my truck. And my son said, "What is he doing?" And I said, "He's profiling." And my son was like, "He profiling?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he knew what profiling was because, of course, he grew up in my house,
Right.
So once he saw who was driving the car and who the passenger was, I had a New York Yankees hat on, I had my earrings in. He got behind me, pulled me over. Walked up to the car and he asked me, he asked for my driver's license registration. I gave it to him. I asked, "Why did you stop me?" And he said, "Well, you didn't signal your lane change." And I said, "Well, I'm in the same lane that I was on when I got on this highway," because I said I complimented your unit when you was parked in the grass up the road. And he said, "Well, you swerved."
Oh, now he's changing the story abruptly.
"Well, you swerved."
Yeah.
So I guess the point that I'm making is, if a police want to say that, if he want to make up probable cause,
He will.
he can make up probable
Right.
cause.
Right.
And it's your word against his word, unless he has it on camera or whatever, or you have it on camera. But he can make up probable cause. There's certain laws where you have to signal so many feet before you get to the intersection. Okay. You can have your blinker on the whole time you're driving.
Yeah.
But I can say you didn't put it on until you got to the stop sign.
Right. So if I profiled you and I want to make probable cause effective, then ultimately I can do
Exactly.
that. And it is like you said, and I am not naive to
Right.
that, and I think the majority of the people, are not. But we still want to educate,
Right.
folks when they come across, the police, and even the young folks, teenagers. I'm sure the first thing, like that young guy that was being pulled over every day, he had to share that with his parents. Did he tell his parents? I mean,
He
he told
did.
you, tell the parents, then, to
Well,
me,
it stopped because, of course, I was still in the
You,
force
yeah.
at the time, and I called the supervisor of these individuals and told them, "Can y'all please stop stopping this
Yeah.
guy? He's a student going to school. He's going from practice to home. That's his only route. Practice, home, school."
And if you had not intervened, it could have gone on. Because I know, like, the parents, yes, they can go and they can file the complaint. That doesn't mean that it's,
Right.
it isn't going to happen. But
Right.
you had some influence, and thank God for that situation that, you were able to, kind of intercept and, stop it from happening.
Right.
That poor young guy, because, they can terrify young people.
You're right. And that traffic stop in Mississippi where he made up the swerving, I gave him my commission card and I told him I've been a cop for 15 some years at the time. And he took my card and went to his unit. 4 other units pulled up. And I was wondering why.
4 other units pulled up
4 other units pulled up. And I'm wondering why it's taking
because you swerved.
why it's taking so long and why these other units
Yeah.
pulled up. Even a K9 unit pulled up. So I knew what the deal was. And
Okay, you knew what the deal was. What was the deal? They had profiled you into what?
The deal was the other units pulled up because they were gonna conduct a search, or they wanted to conduct a search. One officer can't conduct a search with two individuals unless they take the two individuals and put them in a unit and lock them in a unit while he's searching. So the other units pulled up because they were gonna probably sit us on the side of the road, and the other units were gonna watch us while the first officer that stopped us would search the car. Now, the reason the K9 pulled up is because when he would ask, do you have anything illegal in your car? And I would say no. His next question would be, do you mind if I search? And I would say no.
No.
And then he would say, well, I'm gonna run the dog. And he would run the dog. And
But can they run the dog?
if you say
Even
no,
if he said no?
yeah, they can run the dog if you say no. And if the dog would alert, then of course that would give them probable cause to search my vehicle on an alert. So that's once I started seeing all this playing in my review, I knew what the plan was. Now, of course, he had my commission card, and my phone rung, and of course I answered my phone, and it was the sheriff department
From Lafayette?
and they were asking, were you all right? And I'm like, yeah, why? Well, what he did was he called the sheriff department to verify that I was really a police officer.
Like it was a fake commission card?
Like it was a fake commission card. You know what I'm saying? And of course, after that, he came back to the vehicle and he apologized and he wanted to chat about what kind of gun you carry. I don't want to talk about that.
I don't want to talk about that now.
You know?
If we were having polite conversation before.
Right. You know.
But you said.
I'm gonna tell you what type of gun I carry if you tell me what other lies you tell people for pulling them over, okay? But before we pulled off, I called him back to the truck and I told him, I said 7 months ago, you took a class in Pearl, Mississippi.
Oh,
and
wow.
he looked at me, I said, wait. I said the instructor was a Hispanic guy from California. The first class was how not to profile and why not to profile.
Did you take a break throughout that class? Or?
He said, how you know this? I said, because I was your classmate. I sat on the side of you.
So he had not even remembered you,
No.
From the class.
And I took a class on how not to profile and why not to profile in Pearl, Mississippi with that same guy that stopped me and lied about why he stopped me.
Wow. What did he say when he realized you guys were classmates?
He didn't say anything. He just said, have a safe trip.
Wow. Okay, I don't want to know about your gun.
Yeah, I don't, so, I mean, it is what it is, but.
Well, last thing, I mean, we have been having some interesting, conversations. I'm loving it, but I do want to find out your take as we get to the close of our interview. What's your take with all the discussions about all lives matters, Black lives matters, blue lives matters?
What's my take on it? I think Black Lives Matter is important. I do a comparison to pit bulls. Pit bulls, of course, there was everybody knows that pit bulls are used for fighting or used for fighting. Michael Vick went to jail for fighting pit bulls and stuff, and people started adopting pit bulls and reforming them, making them, showing that they're really nice. They're not these mean dogs. Then you had these TV shows. I think it was called Pit Masters or Pits and Parole and Pits. Basically, it was still some lovey type shows about pit bulls and how good they are. But you never saw poodles and parolees. You didn't see chihuahuas and parolees. You didn't see anything about German shepherds. Why? Why not show something that basically indicates all dogs' lives matter and shouldn't be there shouldn't be any cruelty to any dog. You know why you wouldn't see it? Because they were only fighting pit bulls. Okay? So that's why Black Lives Matter is important, because it's black lives that's being taken. And even if it's being taken by other blacks in certain cities, It's still black lives that's being taken. You know what I'm saying? So you focus on, we're not, just because you say black lives matter doesn't mean, but all the other lives don't.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, if the internet existed in the Christopher Columbus era, you would have Native American lives matter. Why? Because it was the Native Americans who were being poisoned and killed and land taken away from them.
Right.
So it would be Native American lives matter. It doesn't mean that
The others
that
don't.
Spaniards and Brits' lives don't matter. It just means that right now the Native
Right
Americans
now.
are the ones that's being
Right.
targeted. So I think it's legitimate, and you know, of course, I think it's a distraction when you put out all lives matter, and it aggravates me when I see movie stars and different sports people say all lives matter. I just feel like you played into their hands, man.
Yeah.
You know, no one ever said that other lives didn't matter, and no one ever said that policemen don't matter, because
Policemen have always mattered.
they've always mattered.
Always.
You know, so that's my take on Black Lives Matter.
Good, I like that analogy. You guys got that, folks? Andres, it's just been a pleasure sitting here talking to you. So I just want to tell the audience that the interview with Mr. Landor will be in our February issue of the Southern View magazine. And you can locate the Southern View magazine on Facebook, just type in the Southern View, or on the website, www.thesouthernview.wordpress.com. And we'll have more interviews coming up for you guys in the near future. I'm going to go ahead and let Mr. Andres give us some closing comments, and it has no doubt, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you, Ms. Suzanne, for the work that you do, because, of course, we know that you reach out to a lot of people, you expose a lot of things that need to be exposed, you put a face on it, you take pictures, you put video out, like I said, you put a face with what people are trying to express and what people are expressing. So I want to thank you. I'm hoping that Lafayette really comes together to be Lafayette strong, or true Lafayette strong, because Lafayette strong right now is divided. We've had many murders on the north side of town, and people didn't come together like some of the murders on the south side of town. And of course, the response is, well, your people have to come together. Your people need to come together like we came together on these murders. Your people have to come together. But you need to understand that many times we don't have the resources. We don't have the resources to come together to do what was done for the theater victims and for the Mickey Shuniks. We don't have the resources. And I think I attribute a lot of that to history. And you cannot erase the fact that history plays a lot on what we have today. You know, you have people, I know people who are 30 years old and they own hundreds of acres, and I ask them, how did you get that acreage? And they say, well, my great-grandfather owned it. So of course, this person will prosper, he will sell that acreage, he'll make money, he can open businesses, he can loan money to his sons, his daughters to open businesses. But my great-grandfather, my great-great-grandfathers weren't allowed to own acreage. They weren't allowed. So, you know, you have to attribute that we cannot, a lot of times we don't have the resources. But if it's truly one Acadiana, then everyone would come together, regardless of what side of the track we live on. So, you know, I'm hoping that in the future that will truly be a reality, a one Lafayette and a Lafayette strong. And Chief, I think he's the man to be the chief. And I also want to wish the new administration, Joe Robideau, Pat Lewis, and all the other councilmen who were newly elected, I want to wish them luck, and I hope that we can come together and make Lafayette truly